On today's episode, we're joined by the Long Take Review to put Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark to the ultimate test. Bad dates. Welcome to the Nostalgia Test Podcast, the show where two longtime friends put their mainstream pop culture past to the ultimate test, the Nostalgia Test.
Dan, I thought you were gonna do the I hate snakes. Snakes. Oh, I hate snakes. That's I was gonna ask you to do the intro today, but I was like, he's got something because you didn't even look down at your notes. So
I had them elevated. The
bad dates was hilarious. The bad with the oh my god, Abu.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems in that whole scene, but there's a lot of issues. But
a lot of issues in this whole movie.
Welcome everyone to the Nostalgia Test Podcast, where I'm Dan Dissinger here in LA. I'm joined by my longtime friend and co-host Manny Coelho in New York. Manny, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm 3 hours away from you. I'm good, man. I excited. We're back. So this is another episode being back. I can't wait to go on break again when you go away.
Yeah, we've been back a lot. We've been coming in, then we're gone. Then we're back, and then,
I mean, we could be just like all the, the writers in Hollywood right now. Like, no one really knows what's going on. Yeah,
solidarity.
Exactly. So, anyways, I'm
But
excited.
we are coming up. I mean, we are coming up on 100 episodes soon. So.
Yes, I'm excited. This is a movie I've been wanting to do for a while. Well, this is actually a marathon that I've been wanting to do because I do want to do all of them. But I didn't want to bring that up to you because of what happened with the Rocky Marathon and how exhausted we were. So I guess we could do that in pieces. We will be doing. I definitely want to be doing Temple of Doom. But guys, we're doing Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we got a guest episode today. So I'm excited.
Yes, we have a returning guest with a co-host. I mean, this is monumental because the last time Jen Subchai was on the podcast, she has an amazing blog called The Long Take. Everyone's got to check it out. And now she has a podcast, and she's here with one of her co-hosts, Greg Cass. Greg, thank you for being here. Short notice, also. So just want to also MVPs as well for this. But thank you for being here, and tell us a little bit about your podcast and Jen, how you're doing and the choice to do a podcast, because when I saw you started doing a podcast, I'm like, welcome to the chaos.
I'll have to say, before you answer that, I'm like, she got a little taste of what a podcast feels like, and there's an energy you get from it. So I'm sure she was like, I gotta do that again. Right. I gotta keep doing that.
It was infectious, and so I was like the second we
gave her the drug.
I got to start. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. It's great to be here, and especially great to be here talking about Indy. Greg and I are huge Indiana Jones fans. Really anything Lucasfilm. And in terms of the podcast, the way it really kind of started, not by accident, because I had, and Greg can attest to this, I had sort of passively been floated the idea of us doing a podcast for a long time. But really, it's our mutual friend and colleague, Antonio, who, right before this past Oscars, in the spring, he had pitched to me a co-written article where we debate who's going to win the Oscars. And then I said, well, if we're already doing that, why don't we just record it and call it a podcast? And so we tested it out, and it seemed to go really well. It was super fun. And then we just kind of were off to the races from there. I didn't know if it was going to last beyond, because we did, I think, 3 different episodes covering different categories for the Oscars. And then, we got such positive feedback that I was like, what if we just keep going? And here we are.
Here we are.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to the drug that keeps on getting you back in. And even though we've been back and forth, Dan and I took breaks, and we were still like, I can't wait to pod. I
have to say though that and tip my hat, my fedora to Greg, because he's the veteran of all of us. I want to say he's booked for 4 podcasts this week alone, I think is what.
Wow.
So,
Right, do you like rest your voice? You're like drinking some lemon tea, like
I've got
the
the Andy Circus Gollum juice, just relaxing my vocal cords a little. No,
Yeah.
I think of myself as a professional podcast guest because I like to go on other people's shows and put no work in whatsoever. So, I pop on a mic at a moment's notice. I send the MP3 and then I stop thinking about it, which my regular co-hosts hate, because I do none of the work, but it's great to be here and to guest in that way. Jen was very kind when she started up her show. She started a spreadsheet. It's like, weigh in with whatever movies you want to talk about at different times. And I immediately jumped on indie. I was like, I got to be on your indie show whenever that comes around. So glad to get some pre-gaming on here and to be able to talk Raiders with all of you.
Awesome.
We look forward to this because this got. I mean. Let me just throw it out there. A little bit of just like small little bit of information for anyone, who's listening to this podcast 50 years from now or is living under a rock, that Raiders of the Lost Ark, later marketed as Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and sometimes abbreviated as Raiders, is a 1981 American action adventure film directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Lawrence Kasdan, based on a story by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. Set in 1936, the film stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, a globe-trotting archaeologist vying with Nazi German forces to recover the long-lost Ark of the Covenant, which is said to make an army invincible. And then, $20 million budget. The movie, according to Wikipedia, box office, $389.9 million box office, came out June 12th, 1981, so right around the corner. And it is 115 minutes long. I just wanted to say that because it was the most surprising part to me that this movie was 5 minutes under 2 hours long. And I was like, oh my God. And it was rated PG, which I texted Manny, and I was like, "This is PG."
Well,
because
Dan, I want
way
to bring
more
that
blood
up.
for PG.
Was
way
this
more.
before or after? Because Spielberg is the one who petitioned for a PG-13 for I forget which movie because they wanted to make it rated R. Yeah, Gremlins. They wanted to make it rated R because of how bad, like, gory it was, but he didn't want to lose the box office, so he positioned the PG-13. So I'm thinking this was probably before that because this movie should have been PG-13.
Gremlins came out in 1984.
Yeah.
So that's
so it was probably before he thought about that, and he didn't want to lose box office.
Yeah.
Because you make this R, you're not getting the amount of people coming to see it.
No.
But it wasn't. I mean, you didn't really see. You saw people, I guess, somewhat dying, but like you didn't see that much.
There was a lot of blood splatter.
Yeah, but not like
shots.
Not like Gremlins. Like splatter.
Yeah. It was in between Gremlins and John Wick, right? Like so. No.
Okay. First of all, right off the bat, I always go first impressions. So I always ask the questions to everybody, the guests. Dan and I do this all the time. Is like, when you were asked to watch this again, what your first impressions are. And I'm just going to go right away that when I think about Indiana Jones, I think about, it's going to pass the test. Why not? Like, we're going to put our, you're not going to ruin my childhood. But I realized that I was thinking about Temple of Doom most of the time when I think about it. Like, I was not even a full year old. I was born January 81, so when this came out. So I must have watched this, obviously, maybe even after the second one came out in 86. And I really remember the second one. But I do remember a lot of scenes of this one now that after watching it, when I went to Disney, they do like the Indiana Jones like show, and The Rock is in there, and like the little bag thing, like with the in the
sand.
temple in the beginning of the sand. So like I was like, oh yeah, these are the classic scenes. But like most of my head and like the motion picture in my head is that one and the one with his dad, the Holy Grail one. And which I love, and I don't want to ruin my childhood by watching them. But I was like, I was excited to watch this. So that was my first impression, is that like I couldn't wait, and I was like, well, this is going to be an easy thing to talk about because how bad could it be? But I was like, but it is 80s, and it was before any like
It is 80s.
real crazy like technology was out. So I was like, we definitely have a lot to talk about. So that was my first impression. What about you, Jen?
I was super excited. I mean, this is a classic. Personally, my favorite is Last Crusade. I think that's the best one, just because you can't really replace the magic of Sean Connery and Harrison Ford together. It's amazing. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, you can't beat this. It's just so good.
No.
But you know, but Temple of Doom, when I was a kid, was the one that gave me nightmares. And it's the one I remember. I think probably yes, exactly. That, and then like the eating the monkey brains and all that.
Yeah.
There, to me, that's the one that probably did some damage to me when I was a child. I probably watched it earlier than I should have. But this one I feel like it's a solid classic. I was looking forward to rewatching it. As I was rewatching it, it's funny that you mentioned kind of like the technology, but because I feel like, yes, the effects, look very different, but I didn't feel like they were dated for some reason. And
Only
as I was
one
watching,
scene.
as I was watching, I kind of kept thinking, why is that? Because it's clearly really janky practical effects. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you know what I mean? It looks so different from the sort of polished VFX that we have now. But I was like, there's something about this that has kind of like the spark of imagination and like still kind of creates the illusion. Like, I don't know. It worked on me still. Even though I recognize that technologically it was pretty primitive compared to what we have now.
There's one scene that it was to me was a bad special effects scene, but I'll hold up on what scene that is.
I was very excited to rewatch Raiders, and I do a similar move with these movies that I did with the original Star Wars, which is like, the third one's my favorite, but the first one's a film, like a capital F film. And so watching this one, it was striking how different this feels from the later ones. Now we have 3, soon to be 4 follow-ups. And it's this feeling that Indiana Jones wasn't a thing yet, right? Like we were just uncovering it and discovering it for the first time. So it's not winking at us in exactly the way we expect or repeating a joke in some way. And where that came through to me was some of the cinematography. I mean, it's Spielberg, so he always likes to play with light and shadows and so on, but there were some just drop dead gorgeous shots in this that I'd forgotten, honestly, like when they're digging up the tomb and you get the sunset shot of Indy putting on the fedora. It's like stunningly beautiful. And
and everyone digging in the digging in the desert, all those long shots, those sweeping landscapes, they're beautiful. Greg, did you try to make a mental note of where the horizon line was in a post Fableman's viewing?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. That scene I laughed at because I'm like, he needed to put his costume on. Like, you know how he was dressed differently? And I'm like, why are they putting this scene on that he's just like putting his jacket and the hat on? Like his superpower came from like that. Like, cause he could have stayed in the other thing. Like they're doing that in the background. Like people are still after you. And he's just like, no, nobody sees us digging here. No, it's okay.
That was the craziest part about that scene.
Let me put everything on. I'm like, wait, no, they're not that far away from you. Like, stay incognito. And he's like, no, I need to have my adventure suit on. Like, it was a really interesting thing. So that was a funny scene. But that was one of the scenes that I was about to say about the special effects. Where he looked kind of like demonic and like the storm is happening behind him. That looked a little cheesy.
That shot was a little weird.
Like it almost looks like what's behind me right now. Like it's just like it's like it's a graphic. But I was like, man, they like made him look demonic right there. Like that he's like so obsessed with like trying to find this arc that like he almost got like the evil in him for a second. Like that part. Go ahead.
I guess it still works because to me, it's almost like people who are really good at Halloween. Like it has that kind of feel where you're like, this looks like I can sort of see that this looks cheesy and pretty basic, but like, the spirit behind it is there, and it kind of has that sort of like ghoulishness to it.
Sure.
And it fits perfectly, I think, with the sort of pulpy nature of Indiana Jones as a series, right? Like it's based on the sort of like old timey adventure serials, right? And so and so I think it works. It creates a tone and a feel that works for the story and for the characters.
Yeah, I love Indiana Jones. Like when we said we were going to do this, I was super excited. Harrison Ford and I share a birthday, so I always love Indiana Jones. And I'm like you, Manny. Like, well, I was born in '82, so I wasn't even born when this movie came out. And either I'm having the wrong memories, but I always have a distinct memory of seeing The Last Crusade in the movie theater for some reason.
Really?
Like I have to double check with my parents.
I think you're painting over that. There's
But
no like
89,
how like did
89.
89, yeah, it's possible.
Yeah?
You're a little young.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
I
you're
mean,
right.
Parenting question.
You might have, yeah. Yeah.
I love.
Yeah,
The
I got
Last
taken
Crusade.
to Pretty Woman when I was pretty young, and I was like, "Mom, what's a condom?"
I
There's
love
parents'
Last
questions.
Crusade, but I love Indiana Jones. Like the character himself is just so fun to me, and it's you were talking about the hat, Manny, like, and it's like it becomes like his superpower, right? Like as the series goes on, the hat shows up. Like,
I mean,
it blows away that it comes back. Like in Last Crusade, like when he's sitting there after he almost goes over the cliff and the hat rolls by him and lands in front of him. It's just such a funny thing. And you're right, like Greg, like they're not. It's the first film, so it reminds me of like Rocky 1, where like we don't know how many we're gonna get.
Yeah.
We got this one. We're putting everything we can into it, and we're making this character, and then let's take it from there, right? So, but it was, there's a lot of fun things about Raiders, and especially in the beginning, you got Alfred Molina. Is
Oh
like,
my
right-
God, that was a great scene for him.
I want to know what happened to his clothes and why his clothes are all destroyed, and Indiana Jones just is like ripping his clothes, destroying him. Like it's just crazy. Like, and his assistants are, I would not want to go anywhere he goes.
No.
Like anywhere.
He's kind of like, it's funny because, first of all, we're talking about an archaeologist who, for some reason, has a James Bond feel to him. In
College
my
professor.
opinion, yeah. And my thing was like, he should be like, what's your name? Jones. Indiana Jones. Like, that's how he should like react to something. And I did read that they like almost wanted to make him more of like a heartthrob kind of like James Bond thing. Like, so apparently he was supposed, in one of the scenes when he gets called for the mission, a woman's supposed to come out of his room or something, like a co-ed, and
When
they're
he
like,
was in the robe.
yeah,
He was
and
supposed to, yeah.
and Spielberg's like, we don't want him to be a James Bond type, so like, but I'm like, but you kind of are like, you're alluding to that a little bit, like he has like this like James Bond-ish like thing.
But he's
First
a
of all,
doofus.
He's indestructible apparently because like all of his assistants die. Everyone next to him just falls apart. It's like Mr. Magoo. Like behind him, things are just happening, and he's just like, yeah, all right, got this hat and this leather jacket and this whip. I'm really good to go. Like what? Like nothing happens to him.
He would never get to TSA now with a gun, a whip, and like he's just like packing shit to go like get stuff. Jen, go ahead.
I was gonna say the scene where he's lecturing to his students is the thing that creeps me out the most now when I rewatch it. Especially the with the girl who writes "Love You" on the eyelids. I was just like, and like I think they play like to go back to your he could have been more James Bond. His sort of awkward sort of like processing of what's happening and sort of being kind of like confused by it, I think works pretty well. But they definitely are trying to set it up like all of the students in the class are only there because they have a crush on him, and like, you know what I mean? Like because he's so like dreamy. And so yeah, it's interesting. They kind of tried to have it both ways, where he was both sort of like nerdy professor, but also heartthrob.
Yeah. Well, they had to sell the movie. So, but I think like what Greg was saying, like we're just getting like they're probably testing the waters. Like we got to do a little bit of both to see where this goes, and then maybe the next one, the tone changed a little bit of how we perceived Indy and like what worked and what jokes worked and the storytelling. But hey, it's Steven Spielberg and Lucas. Like this is gonna be a great storytelling, right? Like how bad could it be?
Right.
Like let's put this movie together. We're at that point they were like the prime like tag team. Yeah. So like
amazing. So what were some of your favorite scenes? I would love to, shoot some of those off, because I have so many that, but I would love to hear other people's, like, what are your favorite scenes from Raiders?
Greg, you should go first.
Yeah, I went through this thing where I was like, oh, this opening is my favorite scene. And then the fight in Nepal, I'm like, oh, this is my favorite scene. And then I just kept doing that over and over again. It's like I forgot all the different sequences. And they're so insulated that they really could work like little shorts before your movie in a 1920s theater, or I'm sure that's the wrong date. But if I was really hard pressed to pick one, it's gotta be the truck chase. I don't know. I've sat through a lot of bad Fast and Furious movies, and nothing is as like thrilling as that. And it's like they nailed it way back when. And other movies have actually ripped it off almost directly. I think it was the first Transporter had like a lot of that same choreography go through it. But the way, the fact that Indy battles from the horse onto the truck, out of the truck, off the front, underneath the truck, back to the back, and then back up to the front again. And I mean, it goes without saying, I'm sure, but you get that indie theme pumping from John Williams, and I'm in. I'm just like smacking my fist, like, let's do this. You got this. And it's such a great sequence.
He's definitely Vin Diesel in this franchise. Could do anything. His superpowers everywhere. And Fast and Furious is not bad. It's great, one of the best franchises of this generation.
It's funny, like when you think of like
my guilty pleasure.
The first three, but like that's what's interesting about like Temple of Doom has like one car chase, but like it's pretty good. But like this one and Last Crusade has like multiple vehicle chases, and they're always funny, but they're always good. And they really use like kind of everything around them, and like I love that scene too. Like I still was like amazed by that stunt of going underneath the car. Like that's a great stunt, and it still holds up, like watching that. And I was like really amazed. I was really distracted though this time, because the guy who was in there, the last German guy, was like looked just like Crocodile Dundee, and I was just like, who is this Paul Hogan? Like I was so distracted. I was like, is that him? And I was like just like typing. I'm like, oh no, it was just a stunt guy that was playing this other part. But yeah, no, that's a really great scene.
Jen?
It's hard for me to choose. Yeah, that's why I was stalling. I had Greg go first because I was like, it's gonna be hard to choose. I really love just the humor of the marketplace fight. Yeah. So where there's all the sword fighting, posturing, and then he just shoots the gun.
That wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, it wasn't that. That was because Harrison Ford was just really grumpy that they had been filming for too long. Like that, right?
He had gotten
everyone got food poisoning.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And they couldn't get the positioning right for the whip to grab the sword, because it was supposed to be his superpower, the whip. So like he's just like, why don't I just shoot him? And like Spielberg's like, yeah, and like that. That's a great scene, because like the punchline of like, oh, you brought a gun to a knife fight, like it was awesome. But that whole scene is very cheesy. Like the choreographing with like who's the woman again in the movie? Marion and him are like fighting, and she's just like kind of like slowly hitting the person. I'm like, come on, this is bad. Like move on. And like, why are they like creepily? The people in the marketplace are like creepily like touching him, but then like leaving, and then like once one scene is over, it's as if nothing happened. Like they're like goldfish. They're like, oh, we're gonna go back to whatever, and then like something else happens. Like, oh, crazy, let's touch him. Oh, we're gonna go back to. I'm like, were they all blind? I'm not really sure like what was like going on.
Dude,
to me though, I feel like what makes Indiana Jones as a franchise stand out is that the action itself has a sense of humor. So like that scene to me is emblematic of that. Even just rewatching the opening scene, when he there's so much hemming and hawing over like he's got to get the swap of the sandbag or whatever, right? And then it still doesn't work. Like to me, that's just like it's so funny, and it's like it has that kind of like sensibility to it that a lot of other other franchises take themselves too seriously to do something like that. So
I definitely think that like the comedy it was great in it. What does it remind you of, Dan?
Yeah, Harrison Ford just is a great screamer too. Like when he's just like screaming at Marion to get down, and like she's like throwing her around like a rag doll. Though, like in previous scenes in Nepal, she's like beating the hell out of people, shooting people. She could totally like drink guys under the table, and then all of a sudden she's in the marketplace and she forgets how to do everything. And it's just like but like in the beginning too, when he's running towards the plane, and this guy who looks like Jimmy Buffett is just like just fishing. Everyone else is getting murdered around him, and he's like fishing, and then he's screaming. He's like, "Fuck!" It's like it is amazing to kind of like hear him, because he's like suave but goofy and like really awkward all at the same time. And I guess now that I've been a college professor for so long, I'm like, oh, it makes sense. He's kind of like awkward and weird because, in the back of his mind, he's like, oh my God, like I have so many papers to grade. Like,
I'm on the worst
am I
committee
gotta
on
get
faculty
home?
Senate.
Yeah.
Oh, he's just like, oh my God, he's tied up and he's just like screaming, but in the back of his mind, he's like, oh man, I have so much work when I get home. Like it's just like, it's so much stuff to do. Oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. Like, how long was he away for?
I mean, he takes a lot of sabbaticals. It looks like.
He takes a lot of sabbaticals.
Like, does he bring in that much money to the university that they're just like, it's cool, like he can go do this stuff? Like, people are signing up and paying their tuition just to be in his class because he's that good. So like, we'll let him do what he's got to do.
But also, he's a professor that murders people, and like people are dying all around him, and then he just goes back to work, and like, what's his face? His
Mr.
friend.
Magoo.
His friend just like
chaos,
covers it all up for him. It's just like, it's okay. Go. Who cares? Who cares? Just steal that indigenous like artifact, bring it back to us. There's a reason it's being guarded. You're not supposed to be. You don't touch it like at all. But there is a lot of humor in that. That's really great.
When I was watching this time, because I feel like our attitude towards archaeology as a field has really changed in terms of like, who's taking which antiquities from where, and like why, and like where they end up and who they belong to, and all those sorts of post-colonial questions. And like, I just thought it was hilarious that like, I was like, ooh, like this doesn't really hold up in 2023 because he's like taking this golden idol and like, and everyone seems cool with it, that they're like, oh, like it's for the museum, so that it's fine. But then it was funny because like the second Nazis enter the scene, I was like, all right, we're back. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's because
yeah,
like he's trying to take it before the Nazis take it. Then it's totally fine.
Oh, you froze up, Jen.
Lights just went out.
Hello. Everybody else is frozen.
No,
I'm good.
Greg.
Yeah.
Jen
is frozen on mine too, but
Jen, you're frozen. You're frozen, Jen.
She loves Indy too hard.
Yeah, she's like
her power went out.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Okay, so her power. So she'll be back. Okay, so we're gonna continue. All right, so
I was gonna
go ahead, man.
Yeah, Nazis. That's funny because a lot of it. There's a lot of. Don't they talk about Nazis basically in the third one too?
Oh, it's a huge. Nazis are a big part of it.
It's like a huge. Like they were like burning books and stuff in one of them, right? They were like
Hitler is in
like
the third one.
Hitler just himself is in there. It's always been a funny thing because this has been repositioned as like a family franchise. So like there's a Lego video game, maybe two of this, but they don't put Nazis in the video game. They're just like generic soldiers because you're like, yeah, kids can't be playing a video game full of Nazis, at that age.
Yeah.
You wait till they're 12.
I mean, the flag is everywhere. Like they were like really like, oh, we need to like establish this as like the most evil character in the movie is what's going on behind the scenes here.
And they taught a monkey to do like the Nazi salute, which was like when I saw it, I was like, whoa, I totally forgot about that. Like they had to train this monkey to do that. Like that was someone's job to do that shit.
Yeah.
Yo, the monkey was a good actor,
weeks.
man.
Monkey was great.
The monkey did well in this movie. I was like, I thought I was watching the Aladdin scene in the marketplace because he was a better Abu than the recent Abu. I got like he was good. I mean, he was a terrible guy. What I thought was funny with even after when Indy thought she died and he's drinking and the monkey's there, like Indy still doesn't know the monkey's not on his side.
No,
like the monkey played the role of a spy like amazingly,
yeah.
and then dies from eating a date.
Such a good scene.
Like they killed the monkey off from eating a date.
Such a good scene. Such a good scene.
Now, do you think those dates were to poison Indy, or was it just like it just so happened to be bad dates there?
No, they poisoned them.
Poisoned them. Yeah, there's a shot of them sprinkling a little poison on him.
Oh, there was. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that.
Oh, you missed that? The guy with the eye patch just poured poison all over them, like a big bottle of poison.
Not the guy that was telling them the reading of the thing.
No, the monkey's owner.
Yeah.
I missed that. I think that's when I fell asleep.
No, the monkey's owner poured a big bottle of poison on the dates.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, the monkey then the monkey's owner basically killed his own monkey.
Yeah. But he didn't care.
No, he didn't. He did not care about that monkey. I loved that monkey. At first, I didn't like him, but like I turned to like him.
Are you
just because he was such a great actor
right now? I think you are.
Yeah, they should. They should just have like the monkey was a great spy. I mean, come on, he kept it going. Like I still think it's amazing that he was drinking with Indy after like when Indy's like sobbing, thinking that what's her name died, and like the monkey didn't lose character. So I loved it. He was good, and that was probably very hard to train that monkey. So
yeah, Jen's back.
Yeah,
Jen.
sorry. My power went out. It was funny
because you were talking about Nazis and you brought like the arc into it. They're like,
coming for me.
Shut it off. Yeah, Greg was mentioning that even in the Lego movies, they don't bring up the soldiers. They're just soldiers. They don't bring up the fact that it's like Nazis. Yeah, in the Lego video games or whatever.
And part of that, I think, is because in Germany, you're no longer allowed to sell anything bearing the Nazi symbol. So they kind of take it all, scrub it out so it can be an international release. But it is, I mean, I don't, this is probably apocryphal. This is just, I read the internet too much. But I believe Steven Spielberg said after he made Schindler's List, he's like, I can't do a like fun Nazi romp again. Like he's kind of realized the gravitas of it. So we get the fourth Indiana Jones, which is, beings from another world and Russians and so on, not Nazis anymore.
Interesting. That's why I went there. I was not happy with the aliens.
But for
thing.
Dial of Destiny, aren't we back to Nazis?
But we're not Spielberg.
Maybe because
I think we are.
Oh, right. Okay,
oh yeah,
that's
we're
fair.
not Spielberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, I feel like Marion is like one of the best characters over the first three, like in terms of like female characters. I mean, I love that actress anyway. She's amazing. And her character, Marion, is just, it would have been great to see her more. I mean, of course, then she's in that fourth one, whatever that is. But like, she's so good in every scene that she's in, and the chemistry between those two is amazing. I mean, as for comedy, for action, for everything. I think like when I remember Raiders, I do remember a lot of scenes with her, especially the mirror scene when she smashes him in the face, which made me laugh so hard because I'm like, he screams so loudly and then she's like, what? Like he just like screamed so loudly and he got smashed in the head with a mirror. But like, yeah, Marion was so good. This movie definitely needed, her energy in it, and I feel like in every scene, especially because like she's really tough, like how she like was drinking in that scene with the French guy and then pulls that knife on him, but like she really is like never. I feel like they have her there, like in the quote unquote having to be rescued, but Marion's not a person that needs to be rescued. Like she's has her own bar in Nepal, and she's like taking care of business, until Indiana Jones gets there and it gets burned down. I mean, literally, he's super bad luck.
He is. I'm telling you, anything he touches goes to. It's how. Like I would run away from him if I saw him. I'd be like, no, we're not gonna go with him because only he will survive. Everyone else is gonna get like he. She almost. If they didn't switch the basket, she'd be dead. Like she almost died there. Like all because of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
They don't like. They weren't after her. They were after him.
Yeah.
Okay. And his selfish greed of getting this thing that ends up in a box at the end of the movie. He doesn't even like do anything with it. Does he get paid for these missions, or is he just doing this out of like, oh, this is just fun for him?
I mean, what are you going to do
like
sabbatical? Except,
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning, he definitely mentions like, I need $2,000, right? So he gets funded.
Okay.
His adventures get funded by somebody.
Got it.
Yeah.
by Marcus.
So
Marcus
By-
sees
yeah.
the objects.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So Marcus just like funds this guy's like, I just want to go do a couple of things, purge basically, like kill a bunch of people, steal a thing, and then like come back and be like, all right, cool, I'm good. Like, does he write books? Do you think? Is that the cat? Like, did he write about his adventures?
I
That's
mean,
my
he's
question.
a dean by the end of the fourth one, so I feel like he
that's
must
right.
have gotten at least a few journal articles out over time.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's,
But that means once he got there, he was cruising, and he's like, I don't need to do any other work anymore. I can just do what
No.
I want.
yeah. I was struck by Marion this time around too, and one of the questions I had is like, she's not often included in the conversation about, say, Princess Leia and Ripley, and I was like, why is she left out of that conversation? And some of it I think is what you were just alluding to, that she's sometimes playing the kind of shrieking somebody come save me role, but the other scenes are so strong. I would put her in that conversation. And maybe she didn't stick around in everybody's imagination since she only was in the one movie while those other heroes came back over and over again. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because Temple of Doom is a prequel, so like they really kind of like go back and they go again, like they go backwards and then they go forwards again. So her character story gets kind of mixed up in like the writing of the whole thing anyway, and she kind of just gets, erased from the lineage of the movie, which is weird because like how it ends, like you're just like, oh, they're together, they'll be on another adventure, she'll be in it. It's like, nope, we're not seeing her ever again until someone decided to make a fourth one with aliens. Like that's when we'll see her. And so like it's really weird to kind of have a character that has such a strong presence in the film literally not show up again. It would be like, I keep bringing up Rocky. It's like Adrian in Rocky 1, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, forget her in Rocky 2. Like, we're just, who cares? Like,
Does anyone know if there was a production reason for that? Like, did she not want to do them anymore, or?
that could have definitely been a reason. Like, because
Like, they might have had to pivot if she was like, I can't do these movies anymore.
that's a good trivia thing. Like, yeah, did she get offered it and she was like, I don't like where you're going with this. I don't like the writing of it. Like, I want to do other things with my career. Maybe she was at a different point, or she couldn't shoot when they wanted to shoot, and that's why they did this. And they were like, all right, well, then we're not going to make it, we're not going to have the same woman interest in it every time. So we're going to, but then in the fourth one, they're like, we should bring it back and get people nostalgic and like, remember the first one. So like I wonder if she was going to be in the next one.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm looking it up now, and it says Spielberg and Lucas told Alan that they intended to make 3 movies, but that her character would likely only appear in the first movie. She was fine with that. She considered herself a bohemian New York actress and didn't want to be tied down to sequels. So there you go. So I guess she's like was quite all right with not having to be in other Indiana Jones films.
But maybe they're also like going back to the whole James Bond thing, like that he's supposed to kind of be like, he's more in love with the adventure than he is with a love interest. Like he doesn't like to be tied down. Because if you remember the one with the alien, what was the fourth? what is the alien one? Fourth one?
Crystal
Yeah.
Skull.
Like they get married at the end, right? Like and like they were trying to make it that the hat went to Shia LaBeouf, Um, like he was supposed to be the next like indie, but like that just didn't. None of that worked out. Also, they chose an actor who also is bohemian, doesn't want to do like sequels anymore. Like that guy's just like in random stuff. So like, why would you choose that? Like, if you're gonna try to do any of that, you should go to an actor that likes to be in sequels and like in a franchise. Which is
Call
funny
it
that
Chris.
they chose him.
I think this movie had some great fighting scenes, and I think Harrison Ford takes a beating really well. Like his character gets beat up quite a lot, and it's really great. And he's just, and I think that's where the comedy comes in. Like when he's fighting that big buff guy around the plane, you know, I mean, he's just getting knocked down. And again, that just reminds everyone, oh, this guy is he's a college professor. He's not James Bond. He's not a spy. He's a guy like that he's an archaeologist, and you know, and we're looking archaeology, is like someone who like goes on these crazy adventures and isn't like basically a paleontologist like in Jurassic Park, just digging up bones and stuff. Like it would be like in that movie if he carried a gun and was chasing things around. Well, I mean, they were getting chased around by dinosaurs.
I mean, he got pretty
badass
in Jurassic Park.
Well, yeah, he had to, but he didn't know that was going to happen.
The hat.
Like,
the
Indiana
hat gave
Jones
him
is
the power.
expecting that, but Indiana Jones is expecting that. He packs a gun. He's like, I'm going to need this when I go try to find this artifact. You know what I mean? And that's what's interesting. But yeah, he makes the fighting scenes are so good because they are humorous at the same time, that as they are like action packed at the same time.
I think that big guy who's in it gets killed twice. He plays two characters and actually gets murdered twice in the movie. There was like a trivia on that. He was like a wrestler,
and he's in all three.
And he played.
So he's the slave master in the second one, I know, and I forget what he is in the third. So yeah, he gets a big death in each one. He's the guy in Temple of Doom who gets crushed in the roller, and that guy.
That's fine. Imagine that, like you're like playing. You're just like, I get invited to all.
Sorry, I think there was a delay. My internet froze for a second again. I'm like, no, stay with us.
Okay.
I love that plane scene because I just remember for the first time I saw it, just the idea that they're fighting around the rotating plane, just from a like sort of fight choreography perspective. Like, it reminds me of like the inventiveness of like Jackie Chan films, or now we have John Wick films that kind of do something similar, where it's like the plane is really only there to complicate the fight, right? And the fact that they have to kind of like duck and fight around it, and I always thought that was really cool.
I thought it was cool because then you could make like a stage play of this movie, because the plane isn't moving. It's just going like this. So you could keep the plane in and which I probably believe that there was a plane in the Disney show because of that. Like you could keep the thing there just going in a circle and use it as a prop instead of like the plane actually taking off and doing other things and stuff. I like it.
Greg, you recently saw the show at Disney World, right?
Kind of. So we went there. We were all seated. We were all ready to go. I was sitting in the audience of that show, and I pre-ordered my tickets for the next indie movie, which just felt like the world's most perfect thing. But it started to thunder and lightning, so they only did the temple portion, which I love that show. I think I've probably sat for that show like 8 times and only seen it all together once, like perfectly.
No.
Otherwise, some piece dies every time I go. There's 2 different times, like 4 years apart, the plane wouldn't work at the end, so they didn't show that scene. But you know, Manny, I think you mentioned like that is such a vibrant part of this. People who have been to, MGM or now Hollywood Studios, like the fact that they really roll the boulder and the marketplaces there and all that, it totally works. And I think it's part of what made it so sticky in my mind, like how much I love this movie over time.
Yeah, the that whole scene, the out of control airplane, like that actually, according to some trivia, like ran over Harrison Ford's knee, and it tore a ligament in his left leg. And they were lucky that the tires were the heat kind of made the tires soft enough that it didn't crush his leg. Yeah, and that's the thing about these movies. Like when I think of like these older movies like this, like the practical stunts and the practical effects, like pretty dangerous, right? Like, I mean, like they had to do that stunt. Like you can't fake it. There's like no real CGI at that point that could do something. Like you have to have people on set to do. I mean, you had to have a guy go under a truck, right? You had to have that happen. They had to dig a trench under that truck so that he was low enough to get underneath that. And then some of the shots apparently with Indiana Jones being dragged behind a truck, that was Harrison Ford, like in some of those shots being dragged behind a truck. So there, you in the 80s, in the 90s, you had to make these films, like you have to have these stunts, right? That's why I think like with Tom Cruise, when you go like you see Maverick and things like that, it's interesting to see because we're so used to huge CGI like movies that like some people, when they saw Maverick, they were like underwhelmed because like it was a lot more practical, and they were like, oh, like, but the actual work that went into making something like that happen is like,
wait, there are people that were underwhelmed watching that movie?
I know some people.
You know this for real?
Tom.
They need to come on the show because that's crazy.
Manny's like, what are their names?
That is crazy. That, like, I saw the making of that film, and it's insane. Like, what Tom Cruise doesn't need to do what he does, obviously, but he's crazy, and like, I'm doing it. I'm Tom Cruise, but like, I agree with you, Dan, that like the practical effects is what makes you love this movie so much, and like, you know, Spielberg got those shots and wanted you to feel that you were underneath that truck. Like, if it was like a far shot and you just like, oh, that was a stuntman, we wouldn't be as excited. Like the storytelling isn't as good then, you know, and like that could also answer like why people like the original Star Wars that we watched versus like the newer ones, because of like it's all CGI and you're just like, okay, it's cool, it's great to see, but like I didn't lose my. I'm still stuck in reality, and I'm like not just getting lost in my imagination. Like where this was like, I'm in the movie, I'm for it. Like, yeah, he's so good that he's underneath this truck and he's not getting trampled by this truck. Like where you just kind of like suspend your disbelief, basically. And I think it's Steven Spielberg has a great way of doing that. And he was my favorite director growing up. I remember doing like papers on him. I went to school for film because of Steven Spielberg. Now I'm not doing anything with that. I own a brewery. Shameless plug. Dan put in the advertising now drop. Oh yeah, we're not doing drops anymore. But like it just allowed for better storytelling. I think people the tough thing about the new AI stuff is like if you rely too much on the AI, you're not getting authentic human like emotion or just storytelling out of it. And you got to find a marriage to it. And I think having the practical effects is like all the movies that we talk about. And why are we stuck in that nostalgic age? I think a lot of it has to do with like practical effects, like that, like in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, first one, independent one, amazing, amazing. You couldn't do that now. There's no way you feel the same with the Michael Bay ones. They're terrible. They're just, you're just like, oh, this is like fun, but it's like it's all CGI and like, oh, whatever, it's cool, it's fun, it's loud or whatever. But like you didn't get into it as much as you did the original. I mean, maybe Jen and Greg don't like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first one, but like I think it's
how dare you?
No, I love those. I love those original movies. They're great. I'm sure that if I showed them to my kids, they'd be terrified. Because I, you know what I mean? Because I feel like just their character design is a lot like, I don't know, like scarier than probably intended, or that would be acceptable now.
I mean, Casey Jones himself. Casey Jones actually, like the way he beats people up with a hockey stick in the middle of Central Park, like he's hitting people in the face with a goalie stick. And I remember we rewatched that. I was like, oh my God. Like,
they made New York dirty. Like that was like, New York was like.
If Raphael didn't showed up, he was going to murder those guys in the park. So I think it's like you get away with a lot more during that time, but you can also make things way realer, and you can really amp up a PG or a PG-13. Like Alien came out in 1979. So like you're thinking like, people are doing stuff that is pushing the limits beyond like this. And I feel like I love a big adventure film. And I think that's what's fun about Indiana Jones. It's a big adventure film, you know?
Did you guys think it was long, or did you like?
It didn't feel long. I mean, I think compared to movies now that we often complain are overstuffed because they're over 3 hours, the fact that this is like a tight 2 or a little less than 2 is made me nostalgic for when movies were averaged at 2 hours instead of 3. I think,
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like you knew when a bad movie was around when it was 90 it was like less than 90 minutes. You're like, oh, this movie's not that great. They needed to wrap it up. But like a 2-hour movie, you used to sit around for a 2-hour movie. You paid $10 to see a movie.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. So I wasn't like bored. I mean, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is still going on.
Bored.
But I also fell asleep, and then I had to watch it. Like I said during the pre-thing, I fell asleep like in midway through, and then I was like, oh, I got to do this again. I'm like, oh, that movie was quick. Like, but I also, watched, I think it was like an hour and 15 minutes. And then I watched the rest of it the next day. What about you, Greg? You think it was long?
It's funny because it didn't, like, when I saw it was an hour 56, I had the same reaction Jen just said. I was like, oh, I love the second Spider-Verse, but I was like, that was 2 hours and 20 minutes of story.
Holy
I'm like, oh,
shit.
And it's like, oh man, like they got in and out in under 2 hours. And then like you realize how long it luxuriates in the moments you forget. So like they're on in the boat cabin for a really long time, or they like the submarine arrives and it's a long time between that and when you're on the mountain. And it's like, oh, I forgot about all of that, because your mind jumps between those kind of kinetic sections that really drive it and are the most memorable. So I think looking back at it at the end, I was like, man, there's so much here. It does feel much longer. I would have probably guessed like 210, 215 if you asked me before seeing the runtime what it was.
Wow.
Dude, he was so powerful, he caught up to a submarine. Like, he swam to a submarine. Let's just talk about that. Like, when the guy's like, where is he? And he's on a submarine, and this music chimes in, you're like, you're like, no. Like, there's no way. There's no way.
I have a question for all of you, if you're willing to think about it. What in this movie, right, since we're focusing on Raiders, what in this movie you think reflects what has made the character of Indiana Jones endure over time?
I mean, number one has to be the costume. I mean, I think of the guy who played Boba Fett being like, yeah, the costume did all the work. So do you see how I pretended I didn't know his name was Jeremy Bullock, even though that's like deeply ingrained in my skull? So I think the costume makes him so iconic. You just look at Harrison Ford with his swagger in that. It's also funny to remember.
Greg, you gotta put the hat on. Put the hat on.
Yeah.
You can't say that as your answer.
There you go.
It's so funny to think about how it was almost Tom Selleck, and it was going to be Tom Selleck, and then they couldn't negotiate the Magnum PI contract with CBS, so they settled for Harrison Ford, which is funny. But then the second thing I would say is kind of the quippiness. My favorite line maybe from Indy in this movie is when Salah's like, how are you going to catch the truck? He's like, I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along. And it's like that quippiness. And then later it's not the years, it's the mileage. Like these are like insanely iconic lines that just make you love him, even though we don't even get to know him that well in this movie. I don't think really.
No, we don't. That's true.
Yeah. I like when he threatens the Bullock in the cafe there, when he says something about like meeting God. He's like, well, let's go see him together. I have nothing but I'm like, he's such a he's crazed, and like he's a good guy, but he's like not a bad guy, but he's Indiana Jones. Like he's not picking a side, but he does pick a side, but he does, like, he's like in there, but yeah, he says some of the most hilarious and weird things, but I think that has to do with Harrison Ford. Like, Harrison Ford is very understatedly hilarious. He is one of the funniest people, and even when you watch like press junkets that he's done, like when he did the Blade Runner press junkets with Ryan Gosling, those are some of the funniest things. Like, they could go on like the road as a comedy duo. Like, those two were so funny. He's just like he cares, but like he's in a I don't care about this attitude, and because of that, like, he's just amazing. I don't think it would have worked with Tom Selleck the same way.
No,
he would have had to be. First of all, Tom Selleck would have had to done it in shorts too. He would have had to do it in shorts, showing off those thighs, and like that would be.
I think it's definitely Harrison Ford that does it. I think have you seen the new show on Apple? It's Shrinking. He plays he's great in it. I find him hilarious. Like his one-liners do it all. That Greg, that line that you said, like it's not the
Yours is the mileage.
the mileage.
Yeah.
He made that. That's ad-libbed. That wasn't in the script. So like, you got to give it to him. Like, I mean, he plays himself in every single movie, but like when he's given like a serious / comedy role, it's gold. It's gold. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just like it. I want it to be like, no, this movie, you know, we're gonna wrap this up because I heard Dan's alarm go off, but like we're about to put it to test, and I want it to be like, no, this just stays nostalgic. It's like kind of cheesy, but then I'm like, man, I actually like it. I had a fun time. Like it reminded me of like when movies didn't have to be so serious. Like, and you're just like in that movie, in that time, you're in that space. Like I said, you suspend your disbelief. And if you could do that to me, and like I could just be like, I'm just in this world. I'm Indiana Jones world. I'm in a comic book. Like this, like I could picture like the pictures of like the art, the concept art of this movie. And like that you could make this a TV show. And I think they had a cartoon, right? Indiana Jones, like junior cartoon. Did they?
I don't think it was a cartoon, but it was the young.
It was a TV show.
Young Indiana Jones.
Yep.
Yeah, but they should have made an animated series. Like in my, they could have. Like it's that good that it could be like could be like this character that we just watched every Saturday morning as a kid. So like, I'm gonna jump and say this thing passes the test, and that's why it's still going. So like,
Jen, I want to hear too. Like, you asked a really good question. What do you think too? Like, makes this character so like resonate so well?
I think part of it is, I mean, everything everyone just said, spot on. But I think that what I can add to that probably is thinking about how he's built as a character, regardless of Harrison Ford, though I totally agree that like this does not work without Harrison Ford. But just thinking about like the idea that he hates snakes, you know, like that seems like just a bit, but it's like that's what makes his character not flat. You know what I mean? It's like stuff like that. And kind of how he's like overconfident and also bumbling sometimes. Like I feel like the way that his character has been built has like surprising amounts of depth for more than necessary, right? And I think so I think part of it is that where it's like he's got quirks to him that make him kind of stand out. And like to go back to what Manny was saying about Harrison Ford, I feel like famously he often has said that Indiana Jones is his favorite character that he's played, right? More than Han Solo. And that how like he was, you know, the rumor was that he was like very quick to want to kill off Han Solo, and but Indiana Jones, he like he's doing another movie at the age of whatever, right? And so if we compare those two characters specifically, right? I think while Han Solo has an incredible arc of being like apathetic to joining the rebellion, right? And like he's kind of like the scruffy nerf herder, like the scoundrel. But I feel like Indiana Jones as a character has a lot more heart, and is like a little bit like just a couple clicks more earnest. Like he's overconfident and cocky, but then he's also like the nerdy professor, and like he's has those quips where he's just kind of, which Han Solo has lots of quips also, but I feel like the tone of them in Indiana Jones is less sarcastic and more just funny, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to nail down, but there's something there when you look at those two characters and you try to compare them because they have some overlap. Like you can see why Harrison Ford is cast as both of them, but at the same time they're pretty different.
I totally agree because he's so human. Like even though it wasn't supposed to be just him shooting the guy with the sword, that to me makes Indiana Jones like a human character because he's like, oh wait, I don't have to do this. Okay, what? And the way he mouths some word, he doesn't just do it. He's like, and then he just turns around. It's kind of like the way like when I was a kid and I found out that Superman can shoot lasers out of his eyes. I'm like, why isn't he just doing that all the time? Like, why isn't he just doing that? Like, in this case, it was just like, oh wait, you packed a gun. Just you could use it, and it's like, well, let's just do that. And the snakes thing is like amazing. I mean, every time. I mean, right in the beginning when the snake is in the plane, snakes on a plane. But like he starts just screaming. He's like, Chuck, what's that? Like it just you just saw a bunch of people get killed, and then there's this comedy beat, and like I think that, and it's weird, like even in John Wick there's little subtle humor when like they talk to each other in like the Continental. They have these like exchanges, like you forget that yes, these like cold-blooded assassins are also people, and like that works where like it just is such an interesting character. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Like, you know, it's just he's so human. Like,
but also if we think about the movies, I would call Indiana Jones films action adventure. I would not call John Wick action adventure. Right? Like that doesn't make any sense, right? And so I feel like that's kind of where the nostalgia for Indiana Jones comes in too, because it's almost like a genre that we don't totally get anymore. I think the closest we probably get are maybe MCU movies, but those are so wrapped up in a larger story and superhero movies, right? It's like that's the primary genre. It doesn't like, and the quippiness is like serving the larger superhero plot. Whereas this is like, let's go on an adventure. We have a goal. We have some adversaries. Like there's a bunch of action set pieces and some quips. I'm struggling to think of, you know, in the 21st century, like what are the movies?
The Jumanji, maybe? I guess the last Jumanji film, like the Mummy movies, like those, I feel like were the one of the last. And what is the movie National Treasure?
I was thinking of National Treasure. Yeah, you get a lot of imitators of indie. So much more recently, the Tomb Raider movies are obviously pretty derivative, but Uncharted last year was like, we can do Indiana Jones. It's like, you really can't do Indiana Jones. So, so like
Tom Holland,
they
not
tried and they can't find it. Yeah, Marky Mark, sorry, sit down, son. Go find the Funky Bunch and get out of here.
It's not good vibrations.
That's why I have hope for this. I hope they capture a little of that magic this time around, but I think it's going to be really hard because, you know, the producer Frank Marshall once said they were always chasing the opening sequence. It's like they never quite found a way to match the energy of that first 10, 15 minutes ever again. And I love all the indie movies, but it's like, yeah, they kind of always were just looking for that sense of adventure and never quite found it.
Remember, Last Crusade had a good opening, I think.
What about the
Young Indie? Yeah.
What about the one with Temple of Doom? I thought like the train cart that had a good like
that was in Crusade.
Crusade, that's what it was. Yeah, not the train. The like the 2-person train thing when they were like.
Oh,
mining
the mining cart.
Sorry,
but like in the beginning, like in the first 10 minutes of the film, like in Last Crusade, you had like River Phoenix, like that first, like kind of that huge train jumping from train to train, and then the magic cart. Well, that was like my favorite part.
And there's a cart full of snakes.
And then there's a car full of snakes. You're like, there it is. That's why. And his screaming was so matched to like Harrison Ford screaming. It was like really well played. But I don't know. I could talk about Indiana Jones forever. The bewilderment of choosing a whip is so weird to me. Like it's like it's just all like so weird. But yeah, so good.
Yeah, but it helps him out all the time.
Yeah,
it does.
Like he needs it to swing. You know, like he gets weapons, he gets things. I mean, it's a good. Doesn't he use it? No, that was when he threw the sand. For the Holy Grail, like throws the sand to get the invisible bridge.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Such a good movie. I can't wait to do the rest of them, but not the
Every
not
one
the
of them
alien
was just
one.
Fun. Like,
the alien one was like what killed me in the alien one was like the opening scene when he. No, not only that, like he jumps in a freezer to survive an atomic explosion, and I was like, you should not tell people that's okay.
Well, it's way better than going under your desk, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
Oh man,
that was crazy. Yeah, wow. I'm kind of. Are you guys looking forward to it? Like that it's going to be better than the fourth one, or do you think it's going to just be like, okay, they did it was a money grab kind of thing?
All I'm hoping for is better than the fourth. That's where I'm setting my incredibly low bar. If we can go out on a slightly better note than we did previously, then I'm satisfied. You have my popcorn money, all that. Do I think it will be anywhere near the first three? I really don't. I mean, kudos for trying, but I just don't think it can get there.
Yeah.
I hope that they have like the comedy of like how old he is. Like they're gonna have to play on that.
Yeah.
You know, like that like he's still doing this and still like able to like beat people up and be a superhero even at this age. So I think that'd be great if they play that, because like everyone's thinking it. So why not? Like that's the type of movie that would like say something to like almost play the joke up to the audience. So
the word on the street from critics is that this is very much like The Force Awakens, where it is tapping into the nostalgia of the originals and sort of like, repeating beats from the original movies, but it doesn't really do anything beyond that. Like it's like a very safe nostalgia play.
I feel like,
it's a money grab.
John,
We PT and I on the Long Take Review. So PT's my other go-to co-host. We spent like 40 minutes probably talking about the roller coaster of expectations that we've been on after the Cannes Film Festival, and then all the critics just like tore apart the movie. So
wow. It's so weird because like the nostalgia part of like the last few years, like people are really like Manny and I, like, we're going to release or maybe it's out now. I have no idea the order of the releases, but the Mario movie, like that to me was just straight, just like, we're doing this, like, here's a bunch of video game cutscenes and you all remember this, right? Same thing with like the Rescue Rangers thing, and a bunch of things, and I know, and just shout out one of our episodes, the Rocky 6 episode, the Rocky Balboa episode, that was a strict nostalgia grab. Like they were like, all right, Rocky 5 was trash, we can't do any worse than that, it's an impossibility, it can only get better from here, let's get the original music back in, let's go back to Philadelphia, let's do all the things that made Rocky 1 and 2 work, and yet let's just do that. And I feel like that's going to make the audiences happy, and it might not make the critics happy, which like really, like how many critics are going to make the box office? Like they're not even buying a ticket. So it really,
as a small business owner, I would have to say that who cares about the critics, and just make your audience happy. Like they're trying to make up for the fourth one, and I'm okay with that. Like just come back and be like, oh, listen, we know this is what you wanted, and this is what we should have given to you before. We were thinking we were gonna like pass this on. We're not passing it on. We're gonna finish it off here. Maybe they are passing it on, maybe to a better person, or like a person who's like more solid in wanting to be a franchise, but like they shouldn't, and they should just be, here you go, and we should all cry and be like, I can't believe it, and this is great. Like I want the nostalgia. Let's go. Come on. Yeah. If you're gonna do this, like I'm okay with it. Like Easter egg all day long. Come on. Mario I love the Mario movie because I thought it was just like, it just fed the Easter egg, like yes, this, that, all these. Did you guys see it?
Yes.
The Mario movie?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I thought it was pretty good. Like it's not reaching the heights. I mean, this is really hard to comment on after having just watched a Spider-Verse, because that is just like the pinnacle.
I heard it was amazing.
It's amazing. It's the pinnacle of animated storytelling. Greg and I are actually going to be recording a podcast in 2 days about this very movie. But so I think it's hard, because it's hard to compare when you have something like that where the storytelling is so great and so sophisticated, and but then it also has the kind of like, everything you would want from a Spider-Man story. Mario Brothers, I think, is like, I mean, I took my kids. It was my son's first movie he ever saw in a movie theater. And wow. They had a great time. They're kind of afraid of Bowser, but they had a great time. And so I think it got the job done. Like I think, and my husband, John, who's a retro video game collector, he's very attached to Nintendo and the Mario franchise. He was happy. He was like that, this really, it felt like it gave me what I wanted. And, the Easter eggs were great, and it was a fun time at the movies. And I think for me, it was like Mario being able to, like, his one main characteristic is like he can just respawn and never gives up, like, spiritually. And how that kind of mirrors what happens when you're actually playing a Mario Brothers game.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever, and to me that was the one thing I latched onto where I was like, that's good, that was a good idea. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just another good example of when the score kicked in, and you're like, yes, like, the music did so much work, and they really nailed it in that, and it was a ton of fun. And I went in just expecting a good 90 minutes, and I got a great 90 minutes. And I think you're right. It's okay for us not to be serious and not to look for like super deep meanings. Let's just have a little fun and a little nostalgia. So,
yeah.
Well, talking about nostalgia, let's put this movie to the nostalgia test. Did you see that? Did you see how I did that?
I saw where you were going with it, Dan.
So
are we going in a filing cabinet like people are carrying us in a warehouse?
Yeah, yeah. I was waiting for Fox Mulder and Scully to walk by. Like that's where I feel like that should be the next step. There should be a crossover of like. I feel like Indiana Jones was creating the X-Files, and then you have the X-Files, and like. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there that just heard that. And like,
there's like a fan theory that exists. Yeah.
Yeah. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, we're here. We're about to put this to the test. And we could start, we'll start with our guest. Jen, we'll start with you, and then Greg, and then Manny, and then I'll go. So, Jen, nostalgia test.
I think this 100% passes the test. I think it still gave me all the good feelings that I had when I was watching it. Before, and sure there are some that, but it has aged a little bit, like we were talking about earlier, but I feel like for the most part, it's not the years, it's the mileage, right? So I think the mileage on this is still good.
Awesome. Great.
A little bit of wonky special effects. I don't think the melting faces are going to terrify anybody anymore. Jen already mentioned the kind of problematic colonialism. Let's throw in some rough Middle Eastern stereotypes. We didn't mention that I think by the creator's book, Marion was 12 to 14 when Indy and her had their original affair.
Oh,
so that's a little rough. That's a little rough.
I mean, that's built into the dialogue. She says, like, I was a child.
Yeah.
And I was in love, and like, you hurt me. And I'm just like, because I think when I was younger and I watched that, like the subtext of that conversation didn't sink in the way it did when I watched it this time. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't even catch that. Oh my God.
But now that we've virtue signaled our 2023 values, I will say absolutely pass the test. I love this movie. We'll never not watch this movie, always rewatchable. It's not one that kicks around cable a lot. It's nice that they just put it on Disney Plus in a nice, clean copy. It looked really good in 4K. So I will say absolutely a good movie. I think, I'd put this in like the time capsule of what was American culture to future civilizations. I think this is a pinnacle.
Wow. Manny.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted just to say that it was nostalgic because but then I sit back and I'm like, if this came out now with a little bit better practical effects and a little bit more woke, I think it could still work as a great storytelling. Like you're talking about two of the best in the business that know how to tell a story, that keep everything suspenseful, keep the plot line going, and the little it worked in so many great shorts, and then on to the next joke, on to the next scene, on to the next joke, on to the next, and you're just like, yeah, I'm for it. And you weren't bored anytime. It was like my ADHD was like, yes, all right, because it was just long enough. Some things, when they're digging, how did you not know that you were going to get caught? Crazy, but whatever.
Broad daylight.
But it's Indiana Jones. He doesn't care. He needed to put his hat on, so he's like, let's go. So it definitely passes the test.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. It definitely passes the test. This is one of those timeless films. It is and like Jen, you were saying too, when we were all talking about how when is the last time we got a really good action adventure film, and it's been a while. So to be able to watch a film that is an adventure film like this, it really reminds me of what I'm missing in terms of film, watching films, because we don't get that either. Now it's a superhero movie or a straight nostalgia grab or something animated. Like this part of the genre isn't there. It's kind of like in horror, like the idea of like straight horror, it doesn't really exist as much anymore. It's really just thrillers. So like we're missing a part of the genre. So it was nice to kind of watch something that was about an adventure from going one place to the next to do something. And there was a goal in mind. So yeah, definitely passes the nostalgia test. Let me just throw this out there real quick. If you had to rank the 4 that are out right now, the 5th one's not out yet. How would you rank them from best to worst?
I think I would go. Hi, Mom. Hi. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think I would probably go because Last Crusade really is my favorite. So I'd probably go Last Crusade, Raiders, Temple of Doom, Crystal Skull.
I think mine matches that. The film snob in me wants to etch Raiders up to the top over Last Crusade, but I enjoy Last Crusade more. And that's, the real test is if I pulled out the box set, what would I put in on your average Saturday afternoon? It would be Last Crusade. So Crusade, Raiders, Temple of Doom, Crystal Skull. Let's hope Dial of Destiny hits somewhere in the middle there. Let's just keep our fingers crossed.
Banny, what do you got?
I haven't seen Temple of Doom. If you just ask me straight up, like for what I remember, it would be Last Crusade, Temple of Doom, Raiders, Skull. But I haven't seen it, so like I could probably change after we do that episode. That's going to probably come sometime this year, so that I could probably change my mind. But just because that's what I really remember all the time. Yeah. But if you're just talking about opening scenes, this thing is. It's there. Yeah. This open scene. Yeah. The first 10 minutes is phenomenal. It's that's like what you remember them about. Yeah. So
it's always hard to place the first film in a big franchise, a successful franchise, right? Because it's like, oh, well, this one started it all. Shouldn't that make it really high up or the best potentially?
But but I agree. Like I'm going Crusade, Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Crystal Skull, and there's like a big gap between Temple of Doom and Crystal Skull, like because Temple of Doom is not a bad film. It's just like you said, Greg. If I'm gonna watch one, I'm putting in Crusade. It's just it's
hard not to,
I remember it. But of course, when we did the Rocky franchise, I mean, our ratings changed a bunch of times. So maybe we'll change.
So that actually brings us to our 4 questions. And Dan, I have them.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
you're gonna.
So we're about to end this. So we're now going into. We've started this year where we ask our guests 4 questions, and hopefully you've seen these movies or listened to this or tried this, so that you can answer them. If not, we'll just not have your answer put in.
We'll just edit this out.
Yeah. The movie Cocktail. Have you guys seen that with Tom Cruise?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you? Does it pass the test?
I haven't rewatched it in a super long time, so I don't know if I can answer that. But I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess no.
Okay. Greg?
I'm in a similar place. Like I think I watched it. Like my older sister and her high school friends were watching it, and I was in middle school, and I was like not supposed to be watching, and I did. So I'm going to go ahead and guess no on that one. Same.
Okay. So our goal in this, what our journey of the nostalgia test, that was our first episode ever, because I grew up watching, my mom loved Tom Cruise, and I basically have a man crush on Tom Cruise because of my mother. And I grew up, that movie is about nothing, but it's so cheesy 80s that it definitely doesn't pass the test. I think we said that it stays nostalgic. It's just so weirdly 80s that we're trying to get the 5% Rotten Tomatoes up more. Like we're like, it's better than some other 80s movies, but all right. So that's my thing. Okay. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the independent version, the first one, the movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, the one that was released independently. Does it pass the test?
100% yes. I have very fond memories of that movie.
Yeah. Again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I'm going to say probably pure nostalgia. I think those creatures aren't gonna fly. The puppets aren't gonna. The suits. I don't even
The
know
rat,
what to call it. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna fly to a. Like if I showed that to my kid, yeah, he'd be out.
All right, 2 more. Three Musketeers bar.
Like the candy bar?
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of never liked those. So, no.
Doesn't even stay nostalgic. Goodbye. Why even drink?
I don't know.
Eat it?
I feel like
Yeah.
as a kid, I was always like, this is not a Snickers bar. And it's not a Milky Way. So, like, what are you doing here in my candy bag? Like
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Same thing, Greg?
You stole my answer because it was like, oh, this isn't a Milky Way, is what happens when I bite a Three Musketeer. It's like, oh, I thought this was the one with caramel in it. Yeah. So-
It's not.
No.
Bad.
So we did a food test,
With trash
food
in it.
episode where we did like five candy bars, and we were like, "What the fuck is this bar? What is nougat? And like, why are you only have little chocolate over it?" It was terrible. So thank you. We like when we say like something's bad on this podcast, we're like, it's Three Musketeers bad. Like that candy bar is terrible. How it's still even around is crazy. Last one. Rate all the Rocky movies, not including Creed.
Oh.
But you have to include Rocky Balboa from the best to the worst.
jeez. I feel like this
Jeez.
is hard because I'm bad
tough
at
one.
remembering which one's which, like which number is which. So I'm going to.
Okay, I'll go really quick.
The Russian one is my favorite.
that's 4.
Oh,
4? Okay.
All right, so that's 4.
Then I
You just
probably
use
go
the
the,
impotence.
then I probably go the first one.
4-1.
And then
Okay.
I go Apollo Creed. That's probably 2, right?
Apollo Creed was 1 and 2.
But I mean,
beats
like,
Apollo
the-
Creed in 2. He loses to him in 1.
Okay. Yeah. So I meant, yeah. So then I go
So 4-1,
4,
2.
1, 2. I don't even remember what 3 is.
3 is with Mr. T and Mickey dies.
Oh.
Oh.
And Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan too. Yeah, he's in
Oh.
there.
That should be good. Sorry,
Oh, it's all good.
my cat has decided to join the pod. First we had a kid being like, "Hi, Mom." Now we have a cat being like, "Okay, why are you not done yet?" Yeah, that would probably be.
You got more.
Wait.
So you got
how
4,
many
1,
more?
2. You had 3, 5, and 6.
Oh, that's right.
Well, that's the 3. She said 3 would. Then
then
Oh,
yeah,
3
3.
was after.
Wait, but I thought you
And
said
then-
we weren't counting. Oh,
we
maybe
are
I
counting
haven't
5
seen.
and 6.
Oh, okay.
It's called Rocky Balboa though.
But what's 5?
Oh, that's right.
Fill me in on 5.
5 is the one Tommy Gunn. He loses all his money, and they fight in the street. It's terrible.
I'm not
I
sure
don't know
I've
if
seen that one.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
so we're gonna put that
Have you
last.
s-
Yeah,
we're
put
gonna
that
put that
last.
last for both of you. Okay.
Okay.
So you're a 4, 1, 2, 3, 6, 5. That's not bad. That's not bad. We've had somebody tell us that 5 was good, and we were like, "You out of your mind." All right, Greg, you're up.
All right. I got to put 1 at the top.
Okay.
Then I will go 3, 4, 2. I mean, where are we now? We're so down low.
You got
let's
6
go
and 5. You
6,
did
5. 6
5.
and 5. We'll
Yeah,
do
I
a
won't
little bit.
allow you to put 5 before 6. It just can't happen. It just can't.
1, 3, 4, 2. Yeah.
No,
All right.
1, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4 is a good one. That's solid. That's a solid one. Like,
Respect.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
we've had some crazy answers in our past, and like somebody actually wrote a whole like paragraph of how 5 is actually good, and we're like, no, it's not possible.
We don't
Something's
accept
wrong
this.
with that
Delete.
person.
Yeah.
We don't accept it.
I just think for me 4 is the most fun. Like I crack up
Yes.
every time I watch 4. It's so good.
Oh yeah,
It's,
it's
not even a film.
awesome. It's not. It's a music video. That's all that is. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
There's so many good montages.
It's
so
all
good.
montage. It's so great.
There's a montage of a montage in it. Like it brings back the last movie's montage in the montage.
Yeah,
It's
it
so
does.
good.
It's amazing.
Wow. Well, Greg, Jen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for staying later. Thank you for going through Raiders and answering our 4 questions. This has been such a fun podcast. Why don't you plug your podcast and let people know where they can get it and where they can follow you?
Sure. So the long take review is available. I hope everywhere you can get podcasts, every podcatcher, or at least the major ones like Apple and Spotify. whichever one Greg uses. Overcast? I think it's
Overcast. Yep, you're on Overcast.
Okay. Yeah. But you can also subscribe to both the Long Take, the written reviews, and the Long Take Review, the podcast, on Substack. So if you go to thelongtake.substack.com, you could just one free subscription gets you both the podcast and our written reviews.
Awesome. Wow. Greg, do you have anything you want to plug?
I mean,
I would love saying that.
I'm actually in Indy 5. Now's the time to bring that up, right? No, please seek me out on social media. Come yell at me about whatever opinions I aired here or elsewhere you don't like. I'm at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON, on mainly on Instagram, also on Substack. I host a weekly Wheel of Time podcast. I'm a guy who knows nothing about Wheel of Time. My co-host knows everything about Wheel of Time. And that's called Through the Glass Columns. And we're reading through the books, but you can start anytime. We're going to review the first season of the show leading up to the second one. So if you're not a reader, but just want to get some show content, let's do that. So Through the Glass Columns, wherever you get podcasts. I assume I just show up and I talk and then I walk away.
Wow.
And don't
so
forget
much.
Rebel Base Card. Greg McLaughlin's going to be mad at you if you don't plug.
Oh, I also review, whenever there's a new Star Wars show on, I review Star Wars shows on the Rebel Base Card feed, which is also wherever you can find podcasts.
Awesome. I can't wait to just dive into all these. And everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode on Razor the Lost Ark. Hit the like, leave a 5-star rating where you listen, iTunes, Spotify, leave a review, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Nostalgia Test, on Twitter at Nostalgia Test, and go to a website. You can suggest a test as well on our website at thenostalgiatest.com, so you can give us something that you'd like to see us put to the test next time. Manny, thank you so much for being here. Jen,
Snakes!
Greg,
I hate snakes!
and everyone, we'll see you at the next test.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please subscribe to the Nostalgia Test podcast to know when new episodes drop. Don't forget to leave us 5 stars and a positive review so more people can find the podcast. Share your thoughts and memories on today's topic on our Twitter at Nostalgia Test and on Instagram at The Nostalgia Test. Tune in next time, because you never know what pop culture will pop up on The Nostalgia Test.